She lost her legs, but obviously found her wings. A true story of great grace and glory. The dance of dreams, from the moment she first heard the, rhythmic beat, of a tabla, Sudha Chandran was captivated by the world of classical dance, Born into a culturally rich South Indian family, Sudha's early life was filled with the melodies of, Carnatic music. So here, the elegance of Bharatanatyam performances, and the fragrance of jasmine that lingered in the green rooms of local theaters. By the age of three, by the age of 3, she was already mimicking dance movements. By 8, she was performing in front of the audience. Obviously, her feet weren't just walking the earth; they were sculpting art. Her parents recognized the extraordinary talent, and encouraged her to train professionally. While other children, were out playing, while other children were out playing, Sudha spent hours perfecting each mudra, each expression, each step. Dance wasn't just a hobby; it was her identity. The stage was her sanctuary, the applause, her prayer and movement, her very form of breathing. So here, the tragic turn is what, of Sudha Chandran. In Sudha's Chandran story, that but fat hair, ever so unpredictable, had different plans. In 1981, at just 16 years old, Sudha was returning with her family from a pilgrimage in Tamil Nadu. When the bus they were traveling in collided with another vehicle. The accident was sudden, jarring and violent. Obviously, amidst screams, smoke, and obviously shattered glass, Sudha was trapped. Her right leg was totally crushed. So here, she was rushed to the nearest hospital, but the facility were inadequate. Okay, days passed without proper treatment. By the time she was moved to a better medical facility, gangrene had set in. Her leg could no longer be saved. Doctors informed the family, to save her life, they would have to be amputated. The news devastated her. For a dancer, her legs were not just limbs; they were her instrument, her language. Obviously, when she regained consciousness, post surgery, and saw the empty space where her leg used to be, the silence of that moment was louder than any scream. She wept. She wept, obviously, not only for her lost limb, but for the shattered future. She believed she no longer had. Despair and determination. Here, Sudha fell into a deep emotional abyss. Confined to a hospital bed. She faced not just physical pain, but a mental storm as well. Obviously, visitors, though well-meaning, offered sympathies that only deepened her wounds. Some said, it's a God's will. Others whispered, her dancing days are over. Obviously, here the weight of societal pity pressed, heavily upon her shoulders. So, but then, something extraordinary happened. Amidst all the darkness, and a spark, flickered inside her, that a thought process, that we called a thought, different and wild, obviously took root. What if I could still dance? This wasn't mere Daniel, it was rebellion. It was a rebellion against fate, against societal expectation, and against the limitation imposed on her by others. Her father, her greatest pillars of strength, stood beside her unwaveringly. He told her that if anyone can return from this, it's you. His words weren't just encouragement; they were a call to battle. The road to recovery here, Sudha was totally fitted with a Jaipur foot. a prosthetic limb developed in India that was affordable and practical, but adapting to it was totally agonizing, right? So every step she took felt like knives piercing her skin. Her body was totally accustomed to the unnatural gait, right? Her muscles screamed in a protest and blisters turned into sores as she persisted. So the real challenge the real challenge here, however, lay ahead. Relearning to dance or on a prosthetic was a Herculean task. Bharatanatyam is deeply intricate. Rely on obviously precise footwork and balance. With one artificial leg here, every movement had to be reimagined. But Sudha was not merely trying to return to where she had been. She was determined to surpass it. She practiced relentlessly morning to night. She trained her family totally converted a small corner of the house into a rehearsal space. Sweat soaked her clothes. Pain became her constant companion, but progress, however slow, became her motivation. The phoenix rises. 3 years later, in 1984, Sudha did the unthinkable. She returned to the stage dressed in a resplendent costume adorned with ghungroos, and with her heart pounding in her chest. She performed in front of an audience that had come expecting sympathy. What they witnessed instead what was magic. So what they witnessed instead of was magic. Her movements were fluid, her expression, emotion, and her presence, commanding. The applause that followed wasn't just for her performance; it was for her spirit. Newspapers, called her miracle dancer. Overnight, Sudha Chandran became a national sensation. Her story soon inspired a biographical film, Mayuri, in which she played herself. The film chronicled her accident, her struggles, and her return to the stage. Audiences across the country were moved to tears. Suddenly Sudha wasn't just a dancer. She was beacon of hope for anyone who had ever faced a setback. Breaking barriers, as her popularity soared, Sudha ventured into television and became a celebrated actress. Her performance in daily soaps and reality shows, made her a household name. But more than fame, she used to perform to advocate for the rights and obviously inclusion of differently abled individuals. She addressed schools, colleges, corporate forums, and international summits. Her message was clear: disability is not in the body; it's in the mind, right? So here, despite her success, Sudha never stopped dancing. She totally she continued to perform on international stages, receiving accolades and awards. She shattered societal prejudices, providing the physical limitations could never confine a limitless spirit, a life that inspires generation. Today Sudha Chandran is more than just a just a dancer or actress. She is an icon. Her story is taught in textbooks, featured in motivational talks, and shared across social media as a symbol of resilience. Her journey is just not about overcoming loss. It's about reclaiming identity, dignity, and purpose. Young girls across India now cite her as an influence. Her life has become a blueprint for those struggling with their own battles, whether physical, emotional, or social. So legacy in motion is here that in interviews Sudha often reflects on her journey with humility. So my accident was a turning point. It took away something, but gave me much more. It gave me a purpose beyond performance. She was established institution to train aspiring dancers, including those with physical challenges. She mentors artists, speaks at leadership conferences, and continues to perform not just with her feet but with her soul. So the final verdict is what? The final words is what here? That Sudha Chandran's life is a masterclass in resilience. She lost her leg, but never her spirit. She faced society's, doubts and her own fears, and stood tall, on one leg, to tell the world that limitations are illusions if you believe in yourself enough. When she walked into a room today, it's not just with poise, it's with the purpose. It's with the purpose, and obviously when she dances, it's not just to music, it's celebration of life itself. So your obstacles may be real, but your strength is greater. So yeah.